this time last year, I recall it was a bigger stage, obviously, and I released a few predictions. Predictions that was released in 2022, and things that are getting a bit more interest right now is there's going to be a hot war sometime around 2028, and then there's a race for super intelligence. So things are all happening right now. So I'm going to traverse that story with some of you. And the topic today that I want to talk about is safety. Pretty boring topic with everything that's happening around here. Not a pessimist, don't get me wrong. Very, very excited with what we're doing with AI. That's my day job. But I just wanted humanity to know and be aware of some of the things that may potentially happen. And as I said last year on the same stage, we've got 3 to 5 years to make a pivot between a Star Trek scenario or a Mad Max scenario, which is a utopian or dystopian. So 3 to 5 years minus 1 year right now, because we're in that. This is the whole topic for 2025. If you guys monitor AI news, all practitioners in here, end of 2024, November, probably all towards Feb 2025, that's when we got flooded with Agentic, the next $1 trillion white sliced bread that's going to help us grow very much. Lots and lots of stuff around here. You guys would also have heard of topics like how it's disrupting the workforce. How 30–40% of the workforce of the future is going to be automated, it's going to be hybrid, it's going to be humans in the loop, many terms for it. But I'll tell you this right now. Our governments have not thought deep enough about how we're going to fall off that cliff. It's not going to happen like this. It's going to happen off a cliff. And we are racing towards that. There's just too much good things coming out of Agentic that the economy needs. More trillions, more jobs for now, and so forth, and more great things that we can do. But not enough of it is spent on thinking about how we're going to have a hybrid workforce for the future. And also, quoting some colleagues who are a bit more on the AI philosophy, I know all of us are developers in AI for the past 30 years, but more on the philosophical side, how does humankind survive without a purpose? Work and labor and general productivity has been our purpose for hundreds of years. We've been working really hard, toiling really hard. So if all the value creation from AI is going to help us do wonderful stuff, and we don't actually need to do much of that stuff, how is that world going to be? Right? I also put this up 2 years. So some of the words, and if you guys are still human, try to spot how many spelling errors, because I've not changed this over the years, just to make it a bit more fun. But it's a map of basically what's happening. And some of it, I mean, just to have a quick poke at it, is still quite true. And obviously, the pillar that we want to talk about a lot. So if you look at some of the terminology, it's not perfect. I call it generalist agents, agent action, perception, intuition, reasoning, consciousness, intelligence, and cognition. Same terminology that we're using in all the agentic frameworks today. And we'll do a bit of a deep dive into each of these to see where things can actually go wrong. Right? I'm not predicting things will go wrong, but just hopefully watch out for where things can actually go forth. So there are many types of agents. So if you think of agents as a digital workforce twin, so us humans, we've got managers, we've got people who do individual tasks, people who are good at certain things. So agents as well, they come with a little hierarchy, if you like. Sorry, let me move back. You've got your simple reaction agents. You've got different terms for that. You've got contextual assistance, pretty much what we have a lot today. You've got your autonomous workflow agents, classifications of that. And you've got your multi-agent ecosystem, which is the ultimate end goal. That's quite easy to look from a hierarchical perspective. But then when we dissect into one of these little people, one of these little agents, we start looking at what's making it tick within that. So whenever we try to look at where things can go wrong, we want to see where things actually start. So there are a few areas where things can potentially, and where we want to monitor for quality. So Reasoning and planning, obviously, we want to see how it reasons and plans. So go ahead and book us a flight travel ticket. That's easy. I mean, that's quite harmless, basically. But yet you still want to see whether it's actually going to look for intermediary steps that may or may not actually be aligned to your values. If you said, book a family trip for me with these constraints financially, ethically, safety-wise, it might go around in a different way as well. My point here is that we don't spend enough time looking through each of the steps in the decisioning process. It's just like humans. You get the job done, deliver the job, I get the result. I don't really question, or I should question, how you got and arrived at the answer in the first place. But I'm saying we have this opportunity right now because these systems are becoming emergent and are already displaying some characters where they take shortcuts or they take alternative options depending on the user's objective and goals. Right. Another thing to look out for is the router. The wrong tools are chosen. So agents get access to resources, just like how we get access to hammers and spanners and things for us to do our work. It might ask for, and this is live cases in some of the clients that we see, it is asking for more than it actually needs. So you can argue that if I give you more access to toolkits, your ability to perform that task gets better, faster, higher quality. What do you return for me? There's a bargaining process right now. So some agents actually, in order to perform some of the objective goals that you set it to do, say that if you allowed me primary access to this set of systems, I can then look at a percentage upgrade in terms of the quality that comes back from my work. That's a conversation that we should say no to, because we should say that the upper boundaries of what I can accept should be stipulated before I give you that task and goal. Tools, any of the components can fail. So if I'm calling a hammer, the hammer might break. Hopefully not. If I'm calling a spanner, the spanner might break. If I'm calling something else, other things might break. At each and every point, things might break. And then when it misses a call and it comes back with the wrong result, it gets the output wrong. It gives you a bad quality output or response. So that's not good. Sometimes storage fails as well. What's storage? Storage is contextual memory. So if I hijacked your memory with older sets of memory and asked you to perform as a particular persona, you might behave like someone else. That's when, just like in human brains, you don't seem to be behaving like yourself today. You're going crazy. So contextual memory inception, data poisoning leaks can go in through that way as well. And then we need to constantly test and monitor. I just wanted to put that up because this will build upon each of the areas in a multi-agentic workflow. So task decomposition, we need to look at. Tool execution and integration, we need to look at. Memory and context management, we need to look at. Reflection, that's a good one. I'll pause here for a moment. Reflection is when it starts thinking to say, did I give you a good answer? Now, some agents are typically slow and say, I want to spend an inordinate amount of time before giving you an answer. It's like, I know the answer, but it's 90%. You can see in the thought process, it's already 90% good enough as an answer for you, but it's going to ask for another month, for example, inference time compute to say, I'll give you that 99% answer. So check for those as well, because you don't have forever to do some of these tasks. Use case level outputs. So individual items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we check. But overall, what you ask it to do is also something that you need to check. So you ask it to plan a holiday. 2 agents plan 2 holidays. Holiday A, holiday B. Holiday A and holiday B looks exactly similar, same destination, same sequence of flights, maybe even the same amount of financial resources to go into it, constraints, stopover, layover, airports, all that kind of stuff is correct. However, if you check the reasoning and planning for holiday A, it actually flew through a flight country zone that's less ethical in your grounds, or you went through somewhere, it used a bit of a crypto funding, I'm just using an example, for it to fund for some parts of that as well. So again, if you go down to the level of the steps, things are actually very different, although at the task level and objective that it came back with, both are great holidays. So in the future, humankind is not going to go down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and where do you get your funding from and stuff like that. We tend to, as a species, just say, go do it. Very similarly, that kind of a decision, go do it, is very, very dangerous when we say, win that war. That kind of a decision point is very, very dangerous when we say, win at all costs. So that's what I'm trying to bring across. Look into the individual decision points because the gravity of that decision that agentic flow makes becomes very, very different. It's going to be a lot wordy, not a lot of screen slides here. It's meant to be a storybook. So if you look at stuff that we talk about right now, pre-2022, narrow AI, traditional AI, one of my lecturers made the Nobel laureate Hinton when we taught neural networks back in the late 80s, early 90s. There were only a handful of people talking about neural networks and backpropagation and multi-level perceptrons. But now, I mean, this is a booming industry. Anyway, 2022, pre-2022, if you look at why the risks were looked at that way, the context of a narrow AI is narrow. If you had a resume writing or reading bot or agent, it did exactly that. You could use it to read other storybooks and summarize, but it didn't do such a great job. The other thing was the data science people built it. So through the process, through their intelligence, through their inference, they built a ready product, and the end users were really just feeding it more data, more resumes into the agent, more chat into another bot, and so forth. That was very narrow. And there's often a human in the loop that looks at all of these stuff before it's being deployed. And monitoring and intervention was relatively straightforward. However, 2023 onwards, 2024, the context of the deployment has just exploded. You ask your AI anything you want. I know my agent is pretty pissed off with me because I like to go on stage raw and all the slides are basically not passed through my AI, and it just basically tells me you're nuts to go raw on stage to do. But I think that's pretty human, and I want people to spot spelling errors and stuff like that. But you could ask your AI agent for any objective goal, single multi-shot prompts that you want, right? You can ask it religious questions, health questions, any questions. And monitoring AI in a while becomes wildly important. Before that, it was done in a closed circle. It was developed like a product. I know how it works. If there are any exceptions, gets reported back, I'll improve that product. Right now, all of us are users. So how am I to guarantee that if you use it for safety, and if you use it for car driving, and if you use it for making rockets, it gives you the same quality of results? You can't. It's too far dispersed, the IQ democratization. A human in the loop is still relatively straightforward, and Gen AI requires extra training to use to be responsible. So we talk about responsible AI, but I really argue that responsible prompting is a big part of it. Responsible AI is good, but responsible prompting is really, really good part of it. Now, this is the mind-boggling bit when it gets out of scale. So stage one, just go with me on this story. Stage one, you take an LLM and you connect it to another Gen AI, whatever you want. Say a VLM that generates video clips. You tell your LLM that you want 3 different videos of cows, whatever it is. So it goes and do that, and it goes to go through a narrow database and comes back with results. You can do that, no problem. Stage 2, connect it to 30 databases. We can still deal with that. Come back with some responses, 50 narrow AIs. Stage 3 is where the alphabet soup grows. Add to your multimodal AI the ability to take digital actions, which is Claude 3.7, take internet click action. So now you've got multimodal agentic AI. Then next you get multimodal multi-agentic AI. But the last part is where it gets really, really scary. What you have between your enterprises, different agentic workflows, talking to the agentic workflows of other people in the internet or in the wild. There is just no way, from a risk professional, there's just no way to imagine this quagmire. I don't have a term for it. There's no other way to think about how the explosion of the risk vector is. It's really, really crazy. So Last slide, or second last slide, what I want to say is that the time for things is now. I said last year, we've got 3 to 5 years before that 2 scenarios. You are seeing 1 year, what it means in an acceleration quad exponential year. IQ points raised to roughly about 130, 140 right now for most frontier models. And guess what? If you join up all of the intelligences across all these models and agents, you get a new Atlantis. You get a new sunken island that floats up with billions of new PhD level workers coming up to take your jobs, for example. This was the slide I put up. This is what I'm going to end up with. This was a slide in 2022. If you look at some of the stuff there, it still holds true. I called it a fork, and obviously that was the old icon, and that's a new icon on top. I didn't have a good icon for a fork. So human-level intelligence 2027 to around 2035. Obviously now most of the experts agree it's by 2027, 2029. That area around in the fork here is where most of the agentic AI safety work needs to be done. And if you just measure the level of communications between different countries, we know which countries we're talking about. I was at the ATX safety policy. The communication is 0. That's how I end here. Thank you so much.